Hey everybody, welcome to Sweater Weather, a podcast about Canadian arts and culture. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Naomi.
So today we're talking about I don't even know how to describe this. I guess it's a 1 hour dramatic comedy. It's called C'est Comme Ça que je t'aime. It's Québécois, it's French in the French language. And it has an English title.
Happily Married.
But it's not really used.
Yeah, it's not a good title for the show, really. It's not a great choice. Really.
So some people, it is apparently the show's available some places in the United States and they're using the English title, Happily Married, but on CBC Gem where you can stream it for free, at least the first 2 seasons with nicely translated English subtitles. It's still called C'est Comme Ça que je t'aime. They left the original French title.
No, because when we were just watching it between segments, it says Happily Married.
Well, if you go on CBC Gem and search Happily Married, you come up with zilch.
Oh, okay.
It's actually titled C'est Comme Ça que je t'aime.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just that when they made it English, when they did the English subtitles and the English intertitles, they just, they did it for the American market.
Okay, but it, literally translated, it would be "This is how I love you."
Yeah, and it's a reference to a particular song. I think that's another reason why they would have wanted to, if possible, keep the original title, because it's the title of a song from 1973 called exactly that. It's a pop love song by. We just looked them up. Actually, it was interesting. The guy's name was Mike Brandt, and he was a French-Israeli singer who was popular in the early 70s. It was had a very dark ending, though. He committed suicide the year in which the show is set, which is 1974. So I just kind of wonder if that's intentional too, because it's a dark comedy.
But I was just reading that's also the year the song came out and was a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that during the show you always see people listening to it and singing along.
It was on the radio. Yeah.
Yeah. But is it incorporated into the plot that do they mention that he kills himself? I can't remember.
I think it's maybe the year after. I think it's the year after in real life that this fellow committed suicide.
That's so sad.
It's a very funny show. It's a very silly show. It's also very dark. It's 1 hour. It's like 48 minutes without commercials.
And we watched season 1 and most of season 2, but ages ago.
Some of season 2,
but it was 2 years ago that we watched it. And then we were living in Montreal and we thought that if we watched it with subtitles, we would eventually absorb French and then it would help our French.
Yeah, we were watching it because we wanted to punch up our French.
But it didn't help, really.
You get, the more exposed you are to it, you get a little bit more of the rhythm of French.
Oh, sure, you can understand more, but it doesn't help you speak French. But
no,
we were listening to it, or we were watching it, I should say, in Montreal. And now, we remembered the kind of tone and rhythm and, how much we liked the show, but not the actual plot. So we just watched the first 3 episodes of season 1 again. And I, for one, didn't even remember, minor plot points, so...
Yeah.
The mysteries were mysteries to me again because I couldn't remember who did it or whatever.
That's good. Yeah, well, it's nice to be able to enjoy it again.
Yes.
Before we go any further into the show, which is a great show, but just want to mention our Patreon. So we're doing weekly episodes now, and we're going to be. You have to forgive me. I'm not sure yet if this episode you're listening to right now is going to be a free episode or a premium episode available to Patreon subscribers. So my apologies if you're getting a sales pitch and you've already subscribed to our Patreon, but thank you very much if you've done that. And for everybody else who wants to get premium episodes, which would be, our plan is 2 a month. So every week, essentially, we're putting out an episode, and basically every other week is a premium episode available on Patreon only. So you could go to our Patreon, patreon.com/Canadian Sweater, and get an episode there. Get your premium episodes there.
And another nice thing would be a review.
Yeah. And also, if you're just listening to the show and you like us, give us a review or whatever it is that's available on your podcast app where you're listening. Maybe it's like a rating or a review or whatever. So obviously only good. We only want good reviews, to be honest.
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah, if you can find it in your heart not to give us a bad review, we'd love that.
Yeah.
And if you know anyone who you think might like sweater weather, you could tell them about it.
Yeah.
These are all things that are helpful.
Yeah. All right. On with the show. So C'est Comme Ça is the brainchild of creator and writer François Létourneau is his name, actor, writer's name. He plays a character named Gaétan. And Gaétan is, well, he's hilarious.
He's the best, I would say.
Yeah, he's really very, very funny, very, very silly. So, so Létourneau is, here's the thing. Maybe before we get into this, we could talk a little bit about our relationship to like Québécois culture. Because it is kind of an interesting question. Maybe some people out there have zero relationship with Québécois culture. And to be honest, my relationship is not that much deeper. But like I've always kind of like I did go to university in Montreal. So this is a long time ago now.
I mean, when you're saying people, you mean
English Canadians.
English Canadians.
Yeah, I think if you're an Anglophone, it's very easy to forget that there's such a thing as Quebec culture. But when you go there and spend any amount of time there, I mean, in Montreal, obviously the most Anglophone place among the more Anglophone places in the province, but you get a sense of how much you don't know about Quebec.
Yeah,
because they have their own cultural
they
production.
Absolutely have their own distinct culture.
I mean, the people in the show,
celebrities, and
the people in the show I had never seen before, but if you look them up, they've worked a ton in Quebec, and some of them are household names like in Quebec. And there's like, whatever.
And also their references in the show are like cultural references that Quebecers would know. Yeah.
Dino Bravo, a famous like Québécois wrestler who there was some crossover with English Canada because he wrestled in the WWE a little bit. Mm-hmm. He kind of shows up in the show. There's all these like references to 70s cultural icons that you're like, who's that? Who's René Simard? You look him up. René Le Petit Simard, they call him, was a child singer, like a child star. Looking up, there's like, oh yeah, that's him performing on Québécois TV, and he's got a nice little singing voice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, or even just talking about Robert Bourassa, like the premier of Quebec at the time, who our main character Gaétan is. He works in the office of the premier, Premier Bourassa. He's such an underling that the premier doesn't even know who he is or what his name is.
But he's like obsessed with getting like a personal meeting with
the premier
Bourassa and like wanting to be taken seriously by him. And
it's funny plot point. So there are these references to real Québécois figures. I've always I have to be honest, like when I went to university, I was always like impressed by
Montreal.
Yeah, I was impressed by Quebecois culture. And of course, not having full access to it, partly for the language. I mean, like largely for the language, although I did my best to try to learn French and I do understand it okay, but I don't have easy access to Quebecois or Quebecois references.
I mean,
I just I was like, wow, there's a whole world here of Quebecois culture that is like not available to me or to English Canadians, but it's very vibrant. Yeah. And it's just like, okay, wow, this is it's just odd. The reality of the Two Solitudes, famously they say about English and French Canada, and it really sinks in those moments when you're like, oh, wow, this is cool. This is, first of all, you're like, this is pretty cool. Like some of the stuff is cool and it's vibrant and I have no idea what it is. And I don't think I'll ever really have full access. So a show like this, which is just, it has a little bit of crossover appeal that they put subtitles on and made available on CBC Gem, is a nice little window into a fun part of Quebecois culture.
Yeah, but I also just wanted to say about that, like I grew up in Ottawa and like grew up learning French in school and stuff because it's, you have to be bilingual really to work in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And then, right across the river is Quebec, and nearby is Montreal. And then, my sister lives part of the time in Montreal. We spent 3 months in Montreal 2 years ago. And although I grew up close to Quebec and also like in French immersion, not just learning French, but also we'd learn like about French culture. Quebec French culture. Like we'd always get all the little movies we saw and the books we read and like the cultural references. Like they were very much trying to teach us like French Canadian culture.
Yeah.
But I feel like it didn't really sink in that much. At the same time, if you're an Anglophone in Montreal, for sure, or if you're an English Canadian in Ottawa, or maybe the rest of Ontario, and New Brunswick too, again, is different. But like you are aware that you're an English Canadian, and that's like something different from a French Canadian. By the time you get here, Like people, Alberta, people aren't even thinking about the fact that there's
Quebec
French Canadians
basically doesn't
anymore.
exist. It's not like it doesn't have to. You don't ever have to think about it.
There's no French.
There's no French presence. I mean, people will protest that. Oh, there's some, but like you don't encounter it.
I mean, you buy products here and it says what it is in English and in French still.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's about it. That's the extent.
We will talk about Franco-Albertan communities in places that we don't visit or know about.
And some people do put their kids still in French immersion.
There's French immersion school, but that's just kind of like that is like just kind of like a better educational possibility for people, for basically middle class, upper middle class people who have the access to better, who have the wherewithal to like get their kids kind of an advantage.
Yeah, maybe they'll end up working for the federal government.
And basically that means access to institutional jobs at the federal level. Yeah. I mean, that's what it means. Because you don't need the French to do anything in Alberta.
Yeah. I mean, I just find it really interesting, like the contrast for myself growing up in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Everyone like at least knew a bit of English and a bit of French, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And it like working even in a restaurant, like you really had to be able to speak to people in both, you know?
Yeah.
And then even like when I moved away from Ottawa, I moved to Toronto, and even in Toronto, like you didn't really need French.
No, of course not. No, everyone in Toronto will tell you that. Of course.
And then I lived in New Brunswick, and in New Brunswick, it's different again because there's the Acadian, which is again like a totally different culture in itself, and even a different dialect.
Yeah.
And then moving here to Alberta, like French is just not even something that people think about. You never hear people speak French, like hardly ever. And if you do, you really notice it. And it's like, oh, I guess there's people visiting from Quebec or something.
Yeah.
Or France, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, obviously there are exceptions to all of this, but it's just like our overall experience living in Ontario or in Quebec or near Quebec, as opposed to living here. And
so, but I mean, when Francophone Quebecers talk about, you know, English Canada, I almost feel like they're actually talking about Anglophone Montrealers and like people in Ontario. It's like the rest of Canada's not even really existing in relationship with Quebec. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't have that position inside the culture, but like, I've always I've just kind of been, probably this isn't justified, but like a little bit jealous that they have what seems to me like a coherent and solid cultural system.
Oh, definitely.
That the English Canada does not enjoy because of how porous our language and culture is to basically Americanization.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. I mean, I think Newfoundland has that as well, in a way. Like they have
Well,
their
if they
own.
speak, I'm sorry, but if you speak English, your culture is all going to be from the States, right? So, and if you're speaking French, there's fewer outside influences of that sort.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like we're kind of just theorizing here. Like I do think that there's communities and provinces in Canada that would be very offended.
You can't tell me that Newfoundland has like the same cultural apparatus that Quebec has.
No, but they do have a cultural apparatus, and so does like PEI, like so does Nova Scotia, you know? Like I don't think we can really say that Quebec's the only province in Canada.
Well, my thesis is it's related to the language.
Sure, no, I know what you're saying. I just can imagine people listening to this and being like, excuse me.
Well, they're always going to be saying, excuse me. There's about 12 things we said that people will find fault in, I'm sure. It doesn't really matter to us. And
like, what about the Calgary Stampede that's on right now? We have our own culture here.
I mean, you can't.
I know.
What are you talking about?
You know what I'm talking about.
Like, you can't compare that to an entire system of media.
No, I know. I know
production.
Exactly what you're saying, obviously. I just don't want to dismiss the rest of Canada as just like a big Americanized blob of nothingness. He says.
Well, do you feel like talking about the show a little bit? So it's a fun concept for the show. Basically, there's Gaétan and there's Huguette, who are a couple, and they live in their near, and their like best friends are another couple named Serge and Micheline.
And they're all in their mid-30s.
They're mid-30s, yeah, kind of middle-aged, and each couple has kids. And the premise of the show is that the kids are going away to summer camp, and that for like, what is it, 2 weeks? Something like that?
3 weeks.
It's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so these parents are going to be left alone without their kids for 3 weeks. And what are they going to get up to? And so you're really surprised about the stuff they get up to.
But it starts with like a flash forward, and it's people looking back from, you know, nowish and kind of saying, oh, it's like, how did this happen? How did these four unassuming people become the most notorious criminals in Quebec history?
There's this the first time you watch this, you're like, there's the first scene is like interviews with an author who, you know, it says that this person wrote a book about the like this gang in Sainte Foy.
Mm-hmm.
So this takes place in Sainte Foy, which is a suburb of Quebec City, and he's talking about how, you know, it's so surprising that this was like the bloodiest gang in Quebec history, and then they cut to like a bunch of, as if it were interviews for a documentary.
Yes.
And so there's a group of four people, and these are like, they're talking about, our parents.
It's three people. It's two men and a woman.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So it's like, these are the growing children of the characters.
Yeah.
And they're saying, our parents were like, they were nuts. Like, I can't believe they did that. And then it's like, they say that you need to, you know, you need to like watch out for your kids, but
they say you shouldn't leave your children unsupervised, but sometimes unsupervised parents can be dangerous too.
Yeah. So when you first watch it, you're like, oh, is this, like, I know the show is fictional, but is like based on a true story. But no, this is all BS.
Oh, yeah.
This is all just a fun, playful device.
Yes.
To pretend like this is like a true story. And every now and then they return to that framing device of the author who wrote a book about the people who were watching. But I don't know if they eventually give it up. I haven't said, like, there are 3 seasons of the show. The show just finished. It ran from 2020 to 2024. 2 seasons are available in English on Gem. A 3rd season will be coming soon, and that's the end of the show.
So we were watching it in French with subtitles.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you mean by in English. Right?
Yeah, with English subtitles. Okay. Yeah, it's not dubbed. No, it's not dubbed. Does anything get dubbed anymore?
I think so, but I don't know why, because it's not very pleasant.
I just don't see it anymore.
Like, I think it does happen.
It's been such a long time since I've seen something that was dubbed.
Mm-hmm. So then you see this guy going into a house. And you don't know it yet, but like, it's the guy that we soon learn is their neighbor. So this is like a kind of flash forward, and he goes through their house and he can't find anyone, or goes through a house, and then he goes into the backyard and there's this kind of above ground pool full of bloody water and 4 bodies floating. And so we know that, like, season 1 presumably is going to end with 4 bodies
floating in a pool, and we know that there are 4 protagonists to the show, so we're like, uh-oh, what? Yeah. So there's a nice little bit of mystery,
but they're face down, so we don't know for sure.
So the character, Gaétan is like silly. He's
very goofy.
He's very goofy. He's kind of tall. He has a mustache. He's a coward. He's self-absorbed. Mm-hmm. His wife, Huguette, is she's short and she's blonde. She has intense eyes. She has a scary energy about her, and she's troubled. She's an unhappy housewife, and that's like a really key component to what's going to happen in the show.
And she's 6 months pregnant.
And she's pregnant with their second child.
So she's tiny and like hugely pregnant.
Right. And then the neighbors couple, Serge, he is like an alpha. He's like a sales guy. He's the manager of a department store. So he's a boss type, and he's like traditionally, let's say, more masculine. And he's married to Micheline, she's actually a sessional instructor or a TA at
a lecturer.
A lecturer is what they say at Laval University. So she's kind of like maybe recently learned like about maybe feminist theory, and she's just kind of like has a new. She's like is like part of what's happening with her character is that she's having an awakening, a sexual awakening.
Yeah, but she's like very serious. Like she's sort of serious and unruffleable.
Yeah,
and she's often seen like reading, and like she's just often kind of like, oh, I don't have time for your silliness with the other ones.
And so when the series begins, Gaétan and Micheline are having an affair. Now these are like couple friends who hang out all the time, but Gaétan and Micheline are having an affair.
And there's this motel where they always meet, and their affair is depicted as like remarkably unromantic, where they just kind of meet and they chat and they like turn their backs and take off their clothes and fold them, and then like discuss what position they might want to try.
Right, yeah. So
and he's like somewhat more into her than she's into him. Like he's kind of goofily like trying to kiss her and stuff, and she's just like, oh, let's just do it or whatever. Like, she's very just matter of fact about the whole thing.
Like later on, he's like tells her that he's in love with her, and she's just like, no.
Like, he has like a hysterical almost quality to him, like an emotionally volatile kind of like a slapstick kind of.
Well, he's actually a classic narcissist because in the sense that he's very self-absorbed,
Yeah.
but he's very insecure.
Yeah.
He's very insecure, and so he grapples on to superficial things to bolster his self-esteem. So definitely like Micheline is like his new lover. That's going to be so important to who he is. Well, as for her, it's just a bit of an experiment, and it's just kind of a way to kind of get out of a marriage she's not enjoying.
They've been sleeping together for a year, we soon learn.
Yeah.
But like for her, it's just kind of something to do. Yeah. And we also soon learn that she's sleeping with like tons of other people as well.
Well, or at least she starts doing that. Yeah, as we're watching. And like Gaétan is like, he's also like so insecure about his job, his status at his work, right? And so that makes him, he makes him hysterically like chasing any little thing that will bring him some prestige or recognition in a way that's so
like he's sycophantic.
He's sycophantic and he debases himself doing things.
He often debases himself. That's kind of his thing. And there's like kind of something like going on, like a lot going on with gender, obviously, in gender roles.
Yeah,
like
it's
1974.
Yeah.
And he, you know, one of the things he does that really pisses off Huguette early on is he buys her these like this magazine subscription for housewives. And she hates it. Like you could just see in her eyes, she's like, ugh, this is the worst thing ever.
Yeah, like she's like depressed, and she doesn't like being a stay at home mom, and now she's
and she doesn't like that she stopped going to school because she got married and had kids.
Yeah. So when the show opens, I mean, they're dropping off the kids for them to go away to camp, and Gaétan and Huguette's son is in the back seat crying, and he won't get out of the car. Now it's raining outside, and Gaétan's like, "Don't worry, no one will see you crying. It's raining out here."
But like, there's a lot of like anxiety about masculinity that's like projected onto that poor son. Remember, like later in the series, like you learn that he's really into sewing and like he's quite into stuff that's typically feminine and like. And he's sensitive. Like he's a sensitive little guy, and he cries a lot at camp. And Gaétan just like straight up calls him a sissy, and is really, really disappointed and upset that his son's not more just stereotypically masculine.
But of course, it's all projection of his own anxieties and fears about being not masculine enough, because he loves Serge is he's an alpha and a strong dude, and he can use guns, and he hunts, and he knows how to fix a lawnmower. And that's something that Gaétan can't do, and he's like reliant on Serge to do stuff like that for him. Yeah. And
also remember, we see Gaétan get like more and more sort of like stuck doing typical like women's work as the series goes on, and which
he likes in the end.
He really likes it. And even in, you know, the second episode, or was that the third one where he had to, the third one where he has to plan a party and he has to make all the sandwiches
for it. Yeah. And it actually kind of comes off perfectly well.
Yeah. And he turns out to be really good at it and like really enthusiastic.
Yeah. Worried about whether you should put margarine or mustard on the sandwiches.
Yeah. He's cutting off the crust.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like all these, like, it's a very nostalgic show. Like it's great. The clothing is great. The cars are great. The decor in these houses is really great. It is all very like extremely detail oriented 70s, and then the food as well. So you have these like white bread sandwiches, you have Micheline opening a can of, you know, green peas and like just dumping it in a strainer, like that's dinner. It's just like these canned green peas. Like,
it actually kind of made me want like mashed potatoes and peas and like a drumstick.
They're drinking beer out of those little stubby beer bottles from the 70s.
And they're in that like above ground pool a lot.
So they drop the kids off, and of course there's some foreshadowing. The kids are asking, like, so Serge and Micheline are bringing their kids to the camp as well, and the kids are like, "Oh, you think, you know, we're going to be gone for 3 whole weeks? Do you think we're going to be so different when we come back?" And it's like, no,
they said, "Are you going to be different when we come back?"
Yeah, well, they're like saying, well, we're going to be different, but like, are you going to be different? And then Serge is like, it's like, nah, when you're old like us, you change a lot less.
Yeah.
So, but that is in fact not the case. That is not the case. Oh,
They're going to change completely. Yeah.
There are these little voiceovers in the first few minutes where each character
introduces.
We just have like their internal monologue about who they are. And Gaétan, so just going back to Gaétan, the kind of guy he is, he's like, because I work for Robert Bourassa. He's like so proud of that. And he says, quote, I'm a master of deception. Like he's a political mastermind.
Yeah.
He's absolutely not. Everyone else is so much better at
and
all that
his
stuff.
affair with Micheline, like everyone knows.
Everyone knows about it.
Yeah, like the other two have basically known the whole time.
So, on the way back from dropping the kids off, Huguette and Gaétan stop beside a lake. And we see immediately that they're not a good couple. They're not a happy couple. And Huguette is just like looking off. She's kind of an unhappy person. She's kind of looking off into the horizon. Gaétan's like, what are you doing? And Huguette says, I'm pondering the infinite. And Gaétan like gets mad at her or whatever. And it's like, anyway, let's go swimming. And so the two are going to go swimming in this lake. There's no one else around. And they start to undress, and Gaétan's like, oh, wait, Huguette, you probably shouldn't swim because you're pregnant. And she's like, oh, okay. And so he just like gets naked and goes swimming by himself. And then while he's out there, he gets cramps, and he's like, oh, Huguette, I have a cramp in my calf. And then it's like, oh, I have a cramp on my other calf now. And she's like, does that matter? What? Can you get cramps then?
He's flailing around.
So she has to dive in and save him.
Well,
so
we just see her standing there.
Oh,
like,
no, she doesn't.
Yeah.
She considers letting him drown.
Yeah.
And in fact, she doesn't go in the water, but he gets out okay. He survives.
Yeah, she just stands there and waits to see what'll happen.
Right. So that's how we know how bad their relationship is. She
and then
hates her
later
husband.
she's like, sorry, I didn't help you out of the lake. And he's like, oh, that's okay. I guess you just froze with terror.
She's like, yeah, sure.
And that becomes a real theme where like they all do horrible things to each other, but like they continue to all be friends and like against all the odds. And they're always like, okay, I forgive you again.
Everybody's cheating on each other.
And like
with
literally trying
else.
to kill each other.
Yeah, that's really funny. So anyway, Serge, a lot of the show is like cutting back and forth between the two households, like Serge and Micheline. So Serge shows Micheline the art of sex, the Joy of Sex book, the famous book from the 60s and 70s. And Micheline is not into it. she's
not into him.
She's not into him. She's not into, she's going to use the book with other people, actually. We say Gaétan at work. And so he gets to, he's like at the Capitol building, wherever the premier's offices are in Quebec. And he's in the building, and
he has a windowless office.
He sits like his office is a box. It's a box, dark box. It's really small, and there's no window. And they're like, "Oh, Gaétan, there was a meeting." It's like, so there was an important meeting that no one bothered to tell him about.
Yeah.
So stuff like that's happening to him. Huguette. So like we're talking about Serge as the he has there's a lot of scenes at the department store that he manages, including his back office, and so. Serge is at the department store when Huguette shows up asking to buy a rifle because they sell everything at the department store. It's like the old days. Mm-hmm. And so there's like a hunting section with a bunch of rifles. And she's buying a rifle, she says, as a gift for Gaétan because it's his birthday this week. They're having a birthday party that night. And so she buys a rifle. And isn't that interesting?
And she's like, don't tell him because it's a surprise.
There's other things being set up here. Gaétan meets with a man named René in the parking lot. He's like a dirtbag, kind of tough. He works for a labor union, and it seems like he's trying to get sweetheart legislation from the premier. Mm. But here's the problem. And so here's Gaétan, he's trying to do corrupt political power moves, but he has no power.
And the premier doesn't even know who he is.
And René, the premier doesn't know who he is. He has no ability to do any of the things he says he could. And so the union, these corrupt union thugs are angry at him now because he didn't do something that he said he was supposed to be able to do. So,
but then we also meet Marie-Josée.
Yeah, Marie-Josée, who is She works at the department store. She's like young and pretty, and Serge is like, there's just a weird dynamic. There's something about,
he's creeping on her. Like,
it's actually not him creeping on her. She's creeping on him.
No, like, remember he makes her wear like that push-up bra?
Oh, that's true. At first it is a little bit like that.
And then she like considers killing him. Remember? She goes to his house and like points a gun at him while he's asleep.
This is, okay.
That happens before she starts hitting on him.
Yeah, a little bit later, the dynamic changes, and Serge is just like trying to kind of fend her off because she's making advances on him.
No, I think that like first she considers killing him, and then she decides to take like a longer game where she's gonna like be seductive towards him, but like to the end of destroying him.
Well, but we don't know.
Because like remember later she says she's a political lesbian, and she's like, like she's trying to get him. She's like trying to use her.
Well, we don't know that yet. This is the first episode. We don't know. It's all a mystery, right?
Okay. Sorry, we're talking about. I see. I'm going all over the place.
Yeah. That's not happening in the first. Like the thing with her.
In the first episode, she sneaks into the birthday party. Yeah. And wants to kill him.
Yeah, so they're having their pool party and stuff. And so everyone, it's like a boozy backyard party. They're in the above ground pool. And so Marie-Josée shows up and she's kind of lurking around around the party without anyone else really knowing she's there. Mm-hmm. She takes one of Serge's guns from the rack on the wall. It's like Naomi said. And so what else is going on in this boozy party? Like, so it's like everybody's kind of drunk, right? And Micheline, because she has this self-destructive impulse, she's sick of Gaétan, really, the person she's been having an affair with, as well as being sick of her husband. She like she's like very dangerously revealing details about her affair.
Well, she's in the pool. So Serge goes inside and she's in the pool with it's Gaétan and Micheline and Huguette. And Huguette's pregnant, but she's drunk. Like they're all drunk. And then Micheline she like confides in them. She's like, we decided that like this 3 weeks is a test of our marriage. Like it's this like probation or this period where it's basically like we either decide to be together or not during this 3 weeks while the kids are at camp. And then she confides in them that she met someone and she's been meeting him at a motel and he's like a sexual genius and stuff. And Huguette's like, oh, that's very interesting. And then Huguette gets annoyed and leaves. And then Micheline starts like trying to make out with Gaétan, gives him like a hand job in the pool.
Yeah. So Gaétan gets a shirt from Serge for his birthday.
Oh, and sorry. Then in like one of the show's like sillier, kind of more gross moves, we see Gaétan get the pool net to clean his.
It's very gross. Because yes, he's ejaculated in the pool.
Yeah.
And so it's very real. It's like real. It's like, yeah, you would have to do something like that.
Yeah.
But it's also very gross.
Yeah. So yeah, they have the same shirt. Serge gets Gaétan a shirt that's the exact same as the shirt he has, and it's made of this new-fangled fabric called rayon.
Mm-hmm. And Gaétan, the next day, like Serge picks Gaétan up. Gaétan's wearing the same shirt as Serge. They're both wearing this like this kind of ugly red rayon shirt, and Gaétan gets in the car and is like, yeah, the rayon is fun. So Serge takes Gaétan to the motel where Gaétan and Micheline have been meeting up for their affairs, and like Serge is like, I know Micheline's having an affair and I'm trying to catch her here. And for Gaétan, it's like it's confusing because he's been the one meeting Micheline at this motel, but he doesn't have an appointment with her that day. So it's kind of dawns on him slowly that she's having an affair there with someone else as well.
Yeah, and that's who she was talking about in the hot tub too. Like you kind of suspect that as well.
Yeah, that's right. And so, that's the next episode. That's going to be Dino Bravo, a muscular young man who everybody knows. And the Gaétan meets him. He's like, "Oh my God, you're Dino Bravo!" And so he's like, far from being jealous, he's just like impressed with.
He's kind of excited that he has the same lover
as Dino Bravo does. Yeah.
Like at one point, he says that he thinks of them as a team.
That's right. So this is like, this is the way that the Gaétan is coded sexually in like, not entirely heterosexual ways, right?
Yeah.
So he
like at one point later they have an orgy with some wrestlers and stuff.
Yeah, that's probably coming up mid-season at some point.
And he is like caught in a sexual act with one of the wrestlers.
One of the male wrestlers.
Yeah. But then he keeps denying it and saying they were just practicing wrestling moves.
So they're staking out the motel, but Serge has to he's like, oh, I'm gonna go get some beer and some sandwiches at the dépanneur, like at the corner store. And so he leaves Gaétan at the motel, some snacks for the stakeout.
Yeah.
While they're waiting for Micheline's lover to show up. And so Gaétan, when he's by himself at the motel, he's like hanging out in the parking lot. Someone starts shooting at him. There's like gunshots and ricocheting off of the pavement around him. And he ends up getting shot in... Oh, no, he doesn't get shot.
He thinks he's been shot.
He thinks he's shot, but he just falls down scared, essentially. So,
but then as he runs away, he gets hit by a car. and he was driving
That's Dino Bravo driving the car into the parking lot. So that is kind of the end of episode 1. Like, we're left wondering, okay,
who shot him?
Like, who's shooting at Gaétan? Like, actually, we wonder at the end of it. There's a cliffhanger because, like, oh, he's been shot.
Yeah, we think he's shot.
Yeah, and so it's funny. It is really funny pilot because what we learn is that, oh, this Gaétan guy, everyone hates him.
Yeah, they all want to kill him.
His wife hates him. His lover, his best friend, is possibly hates him.
Yeah,
and is possibly trying to kill him.
Yeah,
and his wife hates him and is possibly trying to kill him because she's gone missing that night after the party. At least in this first episode, we don't know what's happened to her, but she's gone off. So
but then also he's wearing the same thing as Serge, and he like suggests that maybe someone was trying to shoot Serge. Yeah. And we know that Marie José was contemplating shooting
That's
him.
right. So there's a lot of loose threads here.
Oh, and there's the union guy too who might.
That's right. And the union guy's out to get him now too, right? So he has a lot of enemies. Yeah. And it is compelling. It's like a compelling little mystery while it is funny. You know, it's funny
well, like you kind of are like, is he dead? But you know he's not because he's the star of the show. And you're like, not Gaétan, like he's the best part of the show.
So episode 2 is called Hunting Season, and like we're wondering, okay, who's out trying to kill Gaétan? And so this is where we meet Dino Bravo, the big muscle guy. He pulls into the motel, and the Gaétan is like, "Are you a wrestler?" And he's like, "I only really recognize you without your shirt from far away." And so the wrestler Dino Bravo takes Gaétan to the hospital because he thinks he's been hurt. Serge meets Gaétan at the hospital. Serge has mud on his shoes, as if he's been walking around in the forest, perhaps. That's where the bullets were coming from. So we're like, Gaétan looks at his shoes and is like, oh, Serge might be trying to kill me. Huguette is missing. She's still missing. The camp calls Gaétan at home. He goes back home. And it's to say that Martin, their son, is crying a lot. And it's just a very funny conversation where he's like, okay, well, why? What's going on? It's like, oh, he's just crying a lot. It's like, oh, well, what's it about? It's like, we're not really sure. He's just crying all the time. And it's like, well, what should I do? It's like, oh, not necessarily anything. We just wanted him to know that he's crying a lot.
Yeah. And then he's like, well, what does he say is wrong? And they're like, we can't really understand what he's saying.
Because he's crying too much.
Yeah. And then he just like freaks out and breaks the phone.
Because he's like upset about how his son is a weakling.
Yeah, he doesn't like
But of course, it's all projection because he's the weakling. Yeah. You know, that's how he feels about himself. Yeah. And this is, I've listened to...
It's so awful. You feel so bad for the kid.
There's a lot... Yeah, you do feel bad for the kid. This is a silly show. It is very silly. There's lots of just gags and laughs, but like there is an emotional core to it that really feels real. And like this character is so well developed as Gaétan, like that type. And François Létourneau, the actor and creator and writer, he based that on his father. Like he grew up in Sainte Foy. He's from Quebec. Okay. He grew up around that time in that place.
Oh, interesting.
And his mother was a Michelin, has elements of Michelin. She was she went to school, back to school later, and ended up being kind of a quasi-academic.
Dad.
Yeah, and he had a dad, and you have to think about, okay, so in the son, François Létourneau is like a drama kid, right?
Yeah.
And so he would have been seen as not being manly or whatever, right? I'm sure. So
I'm sure
he didn't talk too much about the details, except that a lot of that family comes from.
That makes so much sense.
So he's playing a character inspired by.
So
his
wait a minute, the mom was a Michelin, not a Huguette.
Yeah.
It's interesting because what was I going to say? Yeah, like there's so much going on with, and I mean, this is something we've kind of seen explored a lot in literature, but like that, like the 70s suburban life where like the gender roles are so prescribed.
But there is this awakening and cultural change happened after the 60s that's really like causing a lot of turmoil.
Yeah, and also it's just so actually hard to be in that role, either of those roles, to be like, okay, now you be the man and you be the woman, and like nobody is really like that.
Yeah, that's what you're seeing is like, you know, like Gaétan is not good at being the traditional man. Yeah. He's trying really hard to be, and it's pathetic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And as much as his wife is so depressed and unhappy with having to be a traditional mom.
Yeah.
And so...
Like, I guess you're right that Serge comes the closest to being like
cool,
the traditional...
like he's like fine. He seems like okay
but
being traditional patriarch.
He's kind of being a man in like a typical way, but like he's also like sexually harassing his employee. Like that's part of it, you know? And like his character like has the least like so far to him. Like he's mostly just this guy, this kind of masculine guy. They give him this eccentricity that he is obsessed with cherries, and I feel like that's just like something to make him more interesting.
Oh well, no, I mean like he's hurt. Like when we're gonna find out this episode. I'm not
saying I don't like the character.
We find out this episode. There's a reverse point of view. So the party from the last episode, we see it from Huguette's point of view. Yeah, and then we realize that Huguette knows all about the affair, the Gaétan mission, and so does Serge. And we see Serge lying in bed, depressed and really sad. Yeah. And he's like, so you do see his kind of him being weak.
Oh, he's sad because like his wife doesn't like him anymore, for sure. Yeah. But it's not that he has no emotions. It's more just that he's like the other ones are just a little bit more eccentric.
Yeah.
You know, like he's a little bit more of just a typical guy. Like, of course he's sad that his wife doesn't want to have sex with him and doesn't like him and is sleeping with everybody else.
He doesn't seem to be struggling with his place in life, except that his wife doesn't like him. And
that's exactly right.
And that's a huge thing.
Yeah, that's a huge thing.
He knows his wife doesn't like him. Like Gaétan is like, does not know that his wife doesn't like him. He doesn't know that. No,
he says she hates me.
When does he say that?
Like when he doesn't know, he's like, who shot me? And he's like, maybe it was Huguette. And Serge was like, why would it be Huguette? And he was like, she hates me. And he was like, oh yeah, he does. She does.
Okay, so maybe he knows. He's just repressed it. We have a little scene in a church, and the priest is a funny character. He's giving his homily, his little speech, you know, and he's like, you know, it's a mad world out there. The modern world is so mad. It's a mad, mad world, like the film, the movie. I saw it last week. I'm not sure if it's still in theaters. And he's like, well, I also saw Herbie Rides Again. So it's like his like philosophical speech, like totally based on these like really lame
he's
cultural...
like, what a delightful little car that Herbie is.
And maybe we could take a lesson from Herbie. It's so funny, like a priest trying to be cool, like like stretching to be relevant in the current moment.
And he becomes like a big character in the show as it goes on.
Yeah, they go to him for relationship advice. Like he's their counselor. Like this is like an era before therapy was widespread, and so people would still go talk to the priest about
and
their
doesn't he like
issues.
Become part of their crime circle at some point or somehow?
So what's happening is what we're leading up to here is that this like weird these two weird couples are going to become a kind of crime family.
And then also Mary José is a big part of it. Yeah. And other people get pulled in.
Yeah, so what's basically happening here? Anyway, there's some fun gags. So Gaétan thinks maybe Serge, someone's trying to kill him, right? And he thinks maybe it's Serge. So there's a really funny scene where they're fixing the push lawnmower together, and it's turned over on its side, so the blade's exposed. And so and Serge like goes around the corner, and he's like yelling from around the corner where he's plugging and unplugging the lawnmower. And he's like yelling to Gaétan. It's like, okay, why don't you try to straighten out that blade, you know, like use the wrench. So like to get him to put his hands on the blade. Yeah. Just as perhaps. And Gaétan knows that maybe Serge is mad at him. So he's like testing Serge, like going, okay, so I have my hands on the blades right now. Serge is yelling to him around the corner. So whatever you do, don't plug it in now. And then it's just quiet. And we cut to the blades. The blades aren't spinning. It's like, okay. And then And then he yells okay again, and then he moves his hands towards the blades with a wrench, and then the blades turn on all of a sudden. And you're like, and then he starts to yell at him, like, why did you do that? You plugged in the blades. And it was just like a total miscommunication.
Well,
basically.
he claims it was a total miscommunication.
We don't know. It's just a funny gag where he's like worried his friend is trying to cut his hands off with the lawnmower. And you're like, oh my God, this is your best friend, and this is what you're worried about. So we see like, okay, so basically, so a big part of this episode is the party from the night before, the day before, from Huguette's point of view. And this is where we get a bunch of the mystery revealed to us. So we see that, in fact, Huguette was trying to kill her husband. She's so desperate and upset. She's just done with it. And so she takes the gun that she bought him for his birthday.
She burns the housekeeping magazines in the barbecue.
That's right. There's a scene where he finds the housekeeping magazines. Just the ashes of them inside the barbecue. And Huguette goes to... is like following them and is trying to kill them with the rifle. And there's a really funny scene where she goes into the forest ready with the rifle, and she like, we pan, and there's Serge in the forest with the rifle too. And he's like, Huguette, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, like I came to kill Gaétan. And he's like, oh, me too.
So then they team up.
Yeah.
And they mess.
Yeah, so they're trying to shoot. So basically, Serge is trying to teach Huguette how to shoot, because he's a hunter. He knows how to do it.
Right,
so he lets her take the shot at Gaétan.
And
he's like, I shouldn't have let her take the shot, because she wasn't good enough yet. And it's really funny. So it all comes out that, okay, we know we're the ones who tried to kill you, Gaétan, and we know all about the affair and stuff. And Gaétan, in self-defense, he says this. It's like, look, you should have told me if you didn't want me to sleep with your wife. How am I supposed to know he wouldn't like that?
Yeah, it's funny. So then they threatened, they're kind of about to kill him again when someone breaks into the house, and it's the union guy.
It's the union thug,
Renee. And this is like a very pivotal moment, because Huguette like attacks him, basically physically grabs him.
She takes the gun that had been the gift to the same gun she had shot the day before, and like holds it under the union guy's
because he has a baseball bat that he's planning to like intimidate Gaétan or beat him with.
Yeah.
And Huguette just like shoves him against the wall with this gun, and it's like
holds the gun to his head. Is like, don't ever call me little lady again.
Oh yeah. And from there, the major plot really unfolds of the whole series, because Renee, it turns out, is like basically just a mob guy.
He's just a hired underling for the mob, and he's hired to do jobs like this. And he realized in that moment, like, he's so not only is he overpowered by Huguette and scared, intimidated, like so there is a gag where he was so scared by Huguette that he pooped his pants.
He pooped his pants.
And then so he has to get changed at the house.
They offered to let him take a shower.
So it's just really funny the way everyone's still friends, even though they're trying to kill each other. Like, you can have a shower.
Like end up being like, oh, no big deal. And then they're like, oh, I'm sorry you pooped your pants. You can take a shower, and like, here's a clean pair of underwear.
And so he's in the washroom when like Huguette comes in to brush her teeth. And he's like standing there scared and in awe with a towel around him as she's like brushing her teeth, and she's looking at him kind of in the mirror going like, what's your problem? Why are you looking?
It's really funny too. Like,
and he's totally he basically is in awe of Huguette now.
Yeah. So, but it's like hilarious that she goes into the bathroom. She's like, do you mind if I brush my teeth? And he just like, they're just like in the bathroom together when she almost just killed him, and he was like going to beat her husband with a baseball bat.
Yeah, they're just like, there's this awkward meet in the bathroom, like, oh.
Yeah. So then that leads to him going to meet his boss.
He goes back to tell her, talk to his boss, the mob boss. He's like, this woman is amazing. She has the eye of the tiger. And the mob boss is like, what does that mean? And he's like, just an expression I invented.
Like just now?
Just
like,
now?
I just made it up.
He's like, well, what does it mean? He's like, I don't know. It's like, look, if you're using an expression, it has to mean something.
And he's like,
and Renee's like, oh, sorry.
But that thing about her having the eye of the tiger comes up a lot.
Yeah, and she does. the actress, and so I guess she's like quite well known, and also the daughter of a well-known Quebecois actor, comedian. She's Marilyn Castonguay, so I mean, I think in Quebec people know her well, but she does have a very intense look. Like she looks mean. Like she's got like.
But she's also tiny.
She's tiny. She's fierce. She's fierce. I mean, she's the definition of fierce.
Yes, she really, really is, and she's so good in that role.
And so, on Renee's advice, the kingpin is going to hire Huguette for a hit job.
Yeah, he's like, she's like made for this.
She's made for this. She's got the eye of the tiger. She's got ice in her veins. She's like got no problem using a gun or whatever. And so that's going to be what happens in the rest of the series. Is that she breaks bad. Yeah, and it's also for her a way to make money, to become independent. Otherwise, she's a door-to-door salesman. She does what is it, Avon? Like kind of an Avon kind of thing. That's what she does.
And she uses that to get into her first hit's house. Yeah.
So in the third episode, we probably won't go into too. Well,
let's not do the whole episode.
No, but like so we do see her first hit take place, and it's a Quebec politician, and
she uses her Avon stuff to like get into the house.
Yeah, and there's a recurring visual they rely on quite a bit, and it is funny of her having big like yellow like kitchen rubber gloves, the kind you wear to wash the dishes. She puts those on when she wants to go do a hit, right? So she doesn't leave any fingerprints.
Yeah, dishwashing gloves.
Just dishwashing gloves.
And so she's gonna become like the mob boss eventually.
I guess that's where this is headed over 3 seasons.
And the Caid, as he calls himself,
the kingpin.
The kingpin.
Yeah.
And he's a ridiculous character.
He wears, we see him.
He never wears pants.
He wears like bikini style bathing suit. Yeah, briefs.
And it's a bathing suit.
It's a bathing suit he's wearing.
And he wears it all the time.
Yeah.
Like with like a dress shirt and like suit jacket.
Well, we saw him at the bar talking to Renee, and like the gag at the end of the scene is when he gets up to walk away, and we haven't seen his face yet, but all we see that he's wearing bikini briefs. Yeah. Like at the bar, he wears this out. This character is jumping the shark a little bit.
And then when we meet him next, he's like playing on a slip and slide in his yard.
Yeah. So this big tough guy.
And he's pretty old. He's like 60.
He's one of the older characters. Yeah, might be 60 years old or something.
And he's just very, very silly, but he's also like a ruthless mob boss.
But we find out later, it's funny, like the arc is going to be like I mean, I guess we're giving spoilers and stuff, but like he's not as ruthless as Huguette, that's for sure.
Oh, she's the most, obviously. Yeah. I mean, it is like that Breaking Bad type thing.
Yeah, it's a Breaking Bad kind of story. And of course, but it has a feminist spin on it.
Like she realizes that she's got the eye of the tiger.
Yeah.
And the others are drawn into it. And they also become like drug dealers, and like Micheline gets really into cocaine.
She's really funny. She's a big cokehead actually for a bunch of it.
And then remember they get those 2 guys, Coco and Puff?
Yeah, Coco and Puff are like other gang members they recruit, and I mean, Micheline's thing is that she sleeps with everybody, and so she's sleeping with those 2 guys.
Coco and Puff, but doesn't she sleep with them kind of together?
Coco Puff. It's a Coco and Puff, these 2 guys.
Coco Puff. And like, don't they all kind of have threesomes together?
Yeah, I mean,
and like do cocaine together.
Yes. Yeah. It's like this very dark, gritty side to the show. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of killing. They have this funny...
and there's they buy a strip club.
They end up buying the strip club. Yeah. They try to make it into a feminist establishment.
Oh yeah, Marie-Josée wants it to be.
She's an ideological Marxist, communist, feminist. Like that's what she calls herself.
Yeah.
Like she's like
she says
she's like a terrorist.
Yeah.
For political causes, and so.
But she's not very good at it, and she keeps sleeping with Serge.
Yeah, in the end, she likes Serge because Serge isn't a bad guy.
But then remember, she marries that other guy, Lucien.
Lucien is really funny when he shows up. We don't see him until I'm not sure when he comes in. Later on, maybe in the first season.
He works in the department store.
He's like
a gun nut. Oh, he's an incel.
Yeah. The character he's playing is like an incel.
Yeah.
And so
he is a virgin.
And he's a virgin.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is all that comes out in the rest of the first season. Yeah. And there's lots of fun characters. The acting is very good. The writing is very good. The particularity of Quebec at that time, these cultural references, has a lot of charm. I think it's very charming. And they end up going to Montreal a bunch and stuff too. That's part of like their criminal
Because
activity.
there's like the Montreal
They have to
mafia
take
is like
on
the big
Montreal
guns.
mafia.
Yeah.
They take over Quebec and then they have to go to Montreal.
That's right. And then there's like that seductress who gets Serge on her side, remember?
That we're really getting into. I mean, it's just, it's the ins and outs of a melodrama over 28
But like
episodes.
it's all like somehow this amazing balance between like violence and like comedy.
Yeah.
And like not just violence, but also like really dark stuff about marriage. Like it's called C'est Comme Ça because je t'aime or and happily married in English, and it is like about marriage.
It is about marriage in a way, yeah.
Or like heterosexuality or like gender roles and stuff, and like how kind of untenable it is. Like not that marriage is untenable, but that kind of marriage,
Yeah.
where like your roles are so strictly prescribed, and like if you don't stick to them, the whole thing falls apart, and it's basically impossible to stick to them.
Right. Yeah, and so criminality is an escape. They do. So the second season, we haven't watched all of the second season, and of course there's a third season. But like the premise is like, the kids come back from camp, and everyone has to go back to normal.
Right, and then
they go to camp again.
Summer,
they wait till next summer. They can go away to camp, and then it all starts up again.
Yeah.
So that's what I remember about the second season. We have to watch the rest of that.
Right. That is a hilarious premise. Oh my gosh.
Yep. So I don't know how much, really on our list of things to do for the show, there isn't a lot of Quebecois stuff. And this is like one of the rare
that's like
that's really accessible to an English audience and makes sense, is even available to them.
Yeah.
So this is one of the few that we're gonna do probably.
I'm so glad that we discovered the show. I mean,
it was just random. It was just because we were in Montreal and wanted to practice French that we were like looking for French stuff we could stream for free, and we found this, and it was really good. But I don't know why anyone else would find it like in English Canada. I'm not sure how you'd come across it or anything. Certainly, maybe people who are a bit more plugged in are hearing about this.
Yeah.
I don't see how they could be though. It's certainly not on the homepage of CBC Gem. It's like I've not seen it promoted anywhere.
It's really so good. Remember you saw the actor of Gaétan walking around?
Yeah, I should say that. Yes, in Montreal, I remember seeing him. It was really funny. He was acting. So I saw François Létourneau walking through the plateau, and it was a busy Saturday. And he was taking side streets because like on a busy Saturday in the summer, like those main streets like Mount Royal Avenue, like just crowded because it's a pedestrian street, but just full of people. So he was trying to walk without being noticed.
Yeah.
And so I was walking the same route, just trying to avoid the crowds. And I was like, oh, that's Gaétan, pretty sure. And then I like kind of like walked a little faster.
Yeah.
Like beside him, was looked over, like, yeah, that's Gaétan for sure. And he was acting like a nervous Gaétan, like like walking as fast as he could,
Wow.
Yeah, it was really funny.
Did he have the mustache?
No, he didn't have facial hair.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really funny because that was kind of our show that we were watching, and then you came home and you were like, I saw Gaétan.
I saw Gaétan. I saw him. He's out there. Montreal. Montreal in the summer. So much fun. What a fun city,
Yeah.
We would like to have the opportunity to go back, hang out and stuff.
Yeah, we would, wouldn't we?
I think it's the romance of Montreal is a big part, like the allure of French Canadian culture too, is that Montreal is such a cool place. And that's because, largely because of the influence of Quebecois culture, how it's shaped that city and its dynamics and stuff.
Yeah, but like Sainte-Foy is just so suburb. Like it could be any suburb.
No, this is not giving me, no. That's just a suburb. Yeah. It's just a 70s suburb.
Yeah.
But yeah, Montreal is like the center of Quebec show business, right? So
oh, sure.
Yeah. So that's where Létourneau lives, apparently. All right. Well, that's C'est Comme Ça que je t'aime.
I do feel like I'm sure that a francophone listening to this would think we were being really annoying.
Well, they wouldn't listen to us. That's the point, is that this is for people who don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
Probably, or have a passing familiarity with it the way that we do. So
Yeah. I do think that knowing a little bit of French, it's always like that, right? Like you can read the subtitles, but if you know a little bit of French, you can kind of see where the subtitles aren't quite exactly what they said. And there's I'm sure there's kind of linguistic like puns and jokes and stuff that we're not getting because we don't know the context and we don't know the culture. So like, I mean, you're always only getting like one layer when you're watching something with subtitles, you know what I mean? Or you're not getting all of them. Like, I feel like there's so much in this show in terms of like references to Quebec culture.
Yeah.
And we're only getting a bit
little
of it.
things like, it feels like, I don't know, I forget the context for this, but is it Serge or Gaétan says like, oh, it's like we're on candid camera. That's the English subtitle, but what he actually says, it's like, oh, it's like a Le Festival d'Humour. So it's like the Just for Laughs festival.
Oh.
That's what but like they were giving these subtitles for an American audience
Yeah.
who wouldn't know any of these references. So they said candid camera.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's another thing I saw that summer in Montreal. I saw a Just for Laughs gag playing out. And I very assiduously avoided it, but it was in the park.
My gosh.
Yeah, it was like a gag. It was a gag with, there was a table. It was like, okay, the premise was that there was the fire service had set up an information table in the park. And there was a woman there standing next to a fireman, like in the full fireman's outfit and stuff. And they were trying to lure people over to the table. And of course, I didn't want to participate, so I didn't get the full story. But from what I could tell is it was basically someone under the table that at some point would shoot a fire extinguisher at them.
Oh my gosh.
It's just like, I don't know the ins and outs of the gag exactly, but I was sitting on a bench eating my sandwich and watching it play out. And and there was very clearly a cabin that had a piece of glass on it where the camera was, but it was labeled as like a recycling bin or something. But it was like, that's definitely not a recycling bin.
Oh my gosh. I would be so mad. Like if I got something like that happen to me. Whenever I see those shows like Just for Laughs or Candid Camera, I'm like, if someone pranked me, I would just be furious. Like I would not be good natured about it, you know?
I feel like the Just for Laughs gags is another episode of our show at some point.
We definitely have to do that.
Yeah. I already used my anecdote, but maybe I'll.
Well, I'm sure you can tell it again, and you'll be forgiven.
Maybe it'll be funnier next time. So yeah. So that's C'est Comme Ça que je t'aime. Highly recommend if you're in the mood for reading subtitles. If you're able to do it, you don't mind. Any last thoughts, Naomi?
No, I just really love the show. I really want to watch the rest of it.
We're going to go on and watch the rest because we didn't watch all of season 2, and season 3 will be available soon, I'm sure. So check it out on CBC Gem if that's your thing.
And if you know French, all the better. Just
maybe
jump
you already
in there.
know. Maybe you already know. Okay, everybody. Well, thanks for listening. Another episode of Sweater Weather. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.